A woman feeds a canine German Shepherd. The next day, he shows up at her door with an emotional surprise. A lonely woman left a bowl of food outside her gate for a trembling canine German Shepherd she'd never seen before. He looked starved, abandoned, but somehow proud. She didn't expect him to come back. But the next morning, he was there again, sitting silently by her front door. Not alone this time. What he brought with him will break your heart. And then put it back together. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, give this video a like, and turn on the notification bell. Your support helps us bring more inspiring and emotional stories like this one straight to you. The rain hadn't stopped for hours. Water trickled down the broken gutters of a small white house on the edge of a quiet Georgia town. Inside, Marianne poured herself a second cup of coffee, staring out the kitchen window at the gray morning. At 53, she had grown used to the silence. Her kids were grown. Her husband had passed nearly a decade ago. Most days felt the same, except this one. That morning, as she stepped onto her porch, with her cup steaming in her hands, something unusual caught her eye. Down by the gate, soaked and shivering, stood a dog. But not just any dog. It was a German Shepherd, big and alert, his eyes sharp even through the curtain of rain. Marianne's breath caught. She knew that look. Her late husband had worked with K9 units during his years on the force. That proud, focused stance. That was no ordinary stray. Still, the dog looked hungry. His ribs showed faintly under his soaked coat, and his paws were caked with mud. He didn't bark, didn't move. He just stood there, watching her with quiet patience, as if waiting for something. Marianne set her coffee down and stepped slowly into the rain. She didn't speak, just walked back inside and returned moments later with a bowl of leftover roast chicken and brown rice. She placed it gently just inside the gate, watching him from a distance. "You look like you've been through a war," she murmured. The dog didn't move at first, but after a few heartbeats, he stepped forward, still calm, still measured, and began to eat. There was a weight to his presence, as if he carried something invisible on his back. Marianne stayed there, arms crossed against the drizzle, watching silently. When he was done, he looked at her again. Their eyes met. Something passed between them. Then, just as quietly as he had come, the dog turned and disappeared into the trees across the road. Marianne didn't sleep well that night. She kept wondering about him, where he'd come from, why he seemed so purposeful, so restrained. No collar, no tags, no panic, just presence. She had almost convinced herself it was a one-time thing, a wandering soul passing through. But the next morning, just as the sun began to pierce through the clouds, she opened her door and froze. There he was, sitting right at her front step. Calm, straight, soaked again, but different. This time, he wasn't alone. At his side lay something, a bundle. Marianne stepped out slowly, her heart beating a little faster. As she approached, the German Shepherd didn't move, didn't flinch. He let her get close, and when she looked down at what he'd brought, her knees nearly buckled. It was a worn police badge, scratched, weathered, the kind her husband used to wear. Resting next to it, wrapped in what looked like a torn piece of uniform cloth, was a tiny, whimpering puppy, barely old enough to walk. Tears filled her eyes before she could even understand why. The shepherd watched her, eyes calm, unblinking. He wasn't asking for help. He was offering something. A gift, a message, something that couldn't be said with words. Marianne sank to her knees, touching the cloth with shaking hands. The puppy stirred, letting out a soft cry. Her fingers brushed the badge, and something inside her broke open. A flood of memories. Her husband's laugh. The way he'd lean down and whisper to his canine partner like it was a child. The smell of his uniform when he came home from long shifts. And now, this. She looked up at the shepherd, her voice cracking. "Who are you?" He didn't answer, of course, just stayed by her side as if he belonged there. And maybe he did. That moment was only the beginning, because what she would discover in the days to come about this mysterious dog, the puppy he brought, and the badge would unravel a story that had been buried for years. And it all started with a single meal, offered on a rainy morning. Marianne brought the puppy inside first. He was shaking, soaked to the bone, and no heavier than a bag of sugar. She wrapped him in a towel, whispering soft words without even realizing it, words she used to say to her own children when they were little. "It's okay, baby. You're safe now." The German Shepherd didn't follow her into the house right away. He sat on the porch like a silent sentinel, watching, waiting. She cracked the door open and peeked out. "You can come in too, you know," she said softly. "I won't bite." It took a few seconds, but eventually the shepherd stood and stepped inside with careful, almost ceremonial steps, as if he were walking into somewhere sacred. His eyes scanned the room once. Then he sat down near the fireplace, like he had been there 100 times before. Marianne couldn't stop glancing over at the badge. She'd placed it carefully on the kitchen table beside the folded cloth. Her hands still trembled when she touched it. Faded numbers were etched into the metal, barely visible through the scratches and mud. But what caught her breath, what made her sit down as her legs gave way, was the name engraved on the back. S. Whitaker. Marianne pressed her fingers to her lips. Her late husband's last partner in the field had that name, Sean Whitaker. He was a young officer, barely out of training when he was paired with a K9 named Rook. She remembered the dog too. Dark coat, always alert. He and Sean had been inseparable, but Sean had vanished during a search mission 5 years ago. Everyone assumed he'd drowned in the river that bordered the county woods. His car had been found abandoned. No body, no dog, no trace, until now. She looked toward the shepherd. "Is that you?" she whispered. "Rook?" The dog didn't move. But when she stood and slowly walked over to him, something strange happened. He lifted his paw and placed it gently on her arm. She gasped, not because of the touch itself, but because of what was tied to his leg. Another scrap of cloth, a different one. She untied it slowly, unfolding the soaked fabric. Inside, neatly wrapped in plastic, was a flash drive. Her heart stopped. She had no idea what was on it. But the look in Rook's eyes, because she was now convinced it was Rook, told her this wasn't random. This wasn't a coincidence. He had come for a reason. She stayed up most of the night. The puppy was fed, bathed, and curled in a blanket by the fireplace. Rook, yes, Rook, lay next to him, watching protectively. Marianne sat at the old desktop computer her son had left behind years ago and inserted the flash drive with trembling hands. There was one folder, labeled simply, "For Her." She clicked it. There were dozens of files, video clips, audio recordings, a journal in Word format. The first video was dated 2 weeks before Sean's disappearance. His face appeared on screen, scruffy, tired, smiling sadly. "If you're watching this," he said, "it means Rook found you, or someone kind enough to listen." Marianne's chest ached. I knew this mission wasn't going to end well. Something wasn't right with the way they sent us out there. I won't get into details now, but if anything happens to me, Rook knows where to go. I told him everything. He remembers. He always remembers. Tears blurred her vision. "I don't know if you'll ever hear this, Marianne, but I trusted Rook to get this to you. You were always kind, always believed in the work we did, and I know you'll understand what it means to care for someone, even when they're gone." The video ended. She sat back, her body numb. 5 years. 5 years since anyone had seen Sean. And now, this. A German Shepherd carrying not just a puppy, but a message from the dead. From someone who'd trusted this animal so deeply that he made him the keeper of his last words. And the question was, why now? Why return after all these years? She turned toward Rook again. He was awake, eyes locked on her, unblinking. The answer wasn't in words. It never would be. But something was coming, and it was Rook who had brought it to her doorstep. The next morning, the sky was clear for the first time in days. Mary Ann stood on the porch with a mug of tea in her hands, staring at the woods across the road. Sunlight filtered through the tall pines, dancing on the damp ground like it was trying to erase the weight of everything that had happened. But nothing could erase it. Not now. Inside, the puppy stirred under the blanket by the hearth, yawning and letting out a soft squeak. Rook was lying beside him, head resting on his paws, eyes wide open, always watching, always guarding. She hadn't slept much. Her mind kept going back to the video. Sean Whitaker's voice echoing through her living room, the look in his eyes, the pain he was carrying. Even back then, he had known something deeper than what he could say on camera. And Rook. God, Rook had remembered. He had carried that drive, hidden in cloth, across who knows how many miles. And more than that, he had chosen her. Her. She knelt beside him that morning, brushing a hand gently along the thick fur of his neck. "You did more than anyone ever expected," she whispered. "But why now?" There was no answer, but there was something in his eyes that told her the story wasn't finished. After feeding the puppy and setting out more food for Rook, who ate but never quickly, Mary Ann sat at the computer again and opened another file on the flash drive. This one was a journal entry. April 7th. Rook and I found another mark carved into the tree line today, just like the ones from last month. I reported it again, but they keep brushing me off. Said it's probably some dumb kids playing games. I don't think so. Rook doesn't think so either. He's been on edge for days. Something's out there, watching us. Mary Ann scrolled down. April 12th. They reassigned my backup without warning. It's just me and Rook now. No radio contact in half the zones. No explanations. I can't prove it, but I think someone wants us quiet. We found a discarded uniform buried beneath the creek bed today. It had a badge number and blood on it. Her stomach tightened. She hadn't heard anything about this. None of it. Sean's disappearance had been chalked up to an accident. A tragic loss. That's what they told her when she asked too many questions. Now it sounded like someone had lied. She printed the entries, highlighted key details. Badge numbers, dates, GPS coordinates. If there was even a chance someone had covered up Sean's death, she owed it to him and to Rook to find out the truth. She wasn't sure who to trust yet, but she knew one thing. Rook hadn't come back just for closure. He had returned because something was still unresolved. That afternoon, she took Rook and the puppy, whom she had started calling Scout, into the backyard. It was fenced in, wide, and lined with oak trees and soft moss. A good place to think. Scout stumbled through the grass, tripping over his own feet, while Rook followed close behind, like a silent guardian. Mary Ann sat on the steps watching them, watching the way Rook's eyes never left the trees. His ears twitched every time the wind shifted. It wasn't just habit. He was searching, hunting. He still remembered whatever it was they had faced in those woods 5 years ago. Later that night, Mary Ann finally made a decision. She called a friend, Detective Carla Monroe. They hadn't spoken in years, but Carla was one of the few people her husband had trusted. Tough, honest, not afraid of stepping on toes. When Mary Ann told her everything, about the dog, the badge, the flash drive, there was silence on the line. Then Carla said, Don't talk to anyone else about this yet. You hear me? Not a soul. I'll come tomorrow." Marianne hung up, her hands trembling. Whatever Rook had brought to her door, it wasn't just a gift. It was a warning, a clue, a message from the past still waiting for justice. And justice had a price. As the night crept in, Rook lay at the foot of her bed, Scout curled into his side. Marianne stared at the ceiling, heart pounding, because in her gut she knew the danger that had taken Sean Whitaker wasn't gone. It was waiting, still out there. Detective Carla Monroe arrived just before noon. She stepped out of her dusty SUV with purpose, her dark boots crunching across the gravel. Marianne hadn't seen her in nearly 7 years, but the woman hadn't changed much. Short-cropped hair, sharp eyes, and that no-nonsense aura that always made people stand a little straighter. Rook came to the window as soon as she pulled in. He didn't growl or bark. He just watched, silent and still. "You weren't kidding," Carla said as she stepped onto the porch, spotting him. "That dog's trained. That's a K9 if I've ever seen one." "He's more than that," Marianne said. "He remembers things, and he came back with this." She handed over the badge, the cloth, the flash drive, everything. Carla sat at the kitchen table as Marianne poured her coffee. For the next hour, they combed through the journal entries, the videos, the GPS coordinates. Carla's jaw tightened as she read through Sean's words. "None of this was ever mentioned in the final report," she muttered. "I remember when he disappeared. We were told the case was closed, that they'd found traces of a landslide near the river, assumed he fell in." "They lied," Marianne said quietly. Carla nodded. "They did." Outside, Rook paced slowly across the yard, ears twitching, nose to the wind. Scout trotted behind him, clumsy and playful, unaware of the storm building around them. "I need to go out there," Carla said, standing. "I want to see the places mentioned in the journal. These coordinates. They point to an area deep in the forest, past the marked trails." "You up for a drive?" Marianne hesitated. She wasn't a cop. She wasn't even sure she was brave. But something inside her had shifted since Rook arrived. Some buried part of her had awakened. "I'm coming," she said. She left food and water for Scout, who gave a sad whimper when she closed the door. Rook, however, jumped straight into the back of Carla's SUV like he already knew where they were going. They drove for almost an hour, winding through narrow dirt roads that cut through dense woodland. Carla pulled over near a rusted fence that hadn't seen use in years. Beyond it, the forest thickened. "GPS says it's a mile in," Carla said. "You sure you're okay with this?" Marianne nodded. Rook was already ahead, ears high, tail straight. No hesitation. They followed him. The forest was eerily quiet. No birdsong, no wind. Just the soft crunch of leaves beneath their boots and the occasional snap of a twig. About 30 minutes in, Rook suddenly stopped. His nose hovered inches from the ground, sniffing with purpose. Then, without a sound, he veered left, off the trail, deeper into the trees. "Should we trust him?" Carla asked. Marianne didn't answer. She just followed. And then they saw it. A clearing, overgrown, forgotten. But at its center, a small mound of disturbed earth. Rocks stacked haphazardly, like a grave. Carla froze. "Oh my God." Marianne stepped forward, her heart in her throat. There, half buried among the stones, was a weathered scrap of uniform, barely visible but unmistakable. And next to it, poking through the soil, a second badge. Carla knelt and gently brushed the dirt away. The name on it sent a chill through her bones. A. Dunley. "Alan, Dunley was listed as missing 2 years ago," Carla whispered. "Different precinct. No connection to Sean on record." "But now we have one," Marianne said. Rook circled the grave once, then sat beside it, tail still, gaze fixed forward like a soldier at attention. This was deliberate, Carla said. Someone didn't want them found. Someone covered it all up. They stood in silence, the weight of truth pressing down on them. Suddenly, from deep within the trees, a branch snapped, loud, too loud. Carla drew her weapon instantly. "Stay behind me," Rook growled, low, fierce, the sound of a dog trained not just to defend, but to fight. The trees rustled again. Then, silence. Carla scanned the area, eyes sharp, gun steady. But nothing came out. Still, they weren't alone. Marianne's pulse raced. Whoever had buried those officers was still watching. They didn't speak on the drive back. Carla kept one hand on the steering wheel and the other near her holster the entire time. Rook lay in the back seat, eyes wide open, as if he expected something, or someone, to follow them out of those woods. Back at the house, Marianne rushed to check on Scout. The puppy barked once when she opened the door, wagging his tiny tail with relief. He was unharmed, but the house felt different now, exposed, as if whatever haunted that forest had followed them home in the silence. Carla paced the living room, phone pressed to her ear. She was trying to reach someone, an old contact in internal affairs, but the signal kept dropping. "I don't like this," she muttered, hanging up in frustration. That second badge wasn't an accident. 2 officers, different departments, both gone without a trace. That's a pattern, and I promise you, it's not over. Marianne stared at Rook, who now sat near the front door, his head low but alert. He hadn't relaxed once since they'd left the clearing. She walked over and kneeled beside him. "You knew," she whispered. "You knew they were out there all along." Rook didn't react. But when Marianne placed a hand on his shoulder, she felt his body trembling ever so slightly, not in fear, but in focus. He was waiting. Then, just after nightfall, someone knocked. Not a soft knock. 3 sharp, deliberate raps on the door. Carla froze. Rook stood instantly, teeth bared. The knock came again, harder. Marianne moved toward the window, but Carla grabbed her arm. "Don't look. Not yet. Let me." She peeked through the curtain, her eyes narrowed. It's a man, alone, standing at the edge of the porch like he owns the place. Rook growled low in his chest, the sound dark and warning. Carla opened the door just a crack, her badge around her neck, gun still at her side. "Can I help you?" The man didn't smile. He was tall, in his late 50s, with a clean-shaven face and a too smooth voice. "I'm looking for a dog," he said. "Big German Shepherd. Answers to Rook." Carla stiffened. "Why?" "He's government property," the man said casually. "Disappeared during an operation years ago. Classified unit. He should never have been on the loose." Carla's voice dropped. "Funny, because I've got reports here saying Rook was listed as deceased along with his handler." The man's smile thinned. "Those reports were filed under orders. Things have changed." Marianne felt a chill rise in her chest. She stepped forward despite Carla's warning glare. "He brought back a badge," she said. "2 of them now, and a drive full of information. If you're trying to collect him, why now?" The man looked at her, and for a brief moment, something flickered in his eyes. A flash of annoyance, or maybe fear. "You should stay out of this, ma'am," he said flatly. "For your own good." Before Carla could respond, Rook stepped forward, silent as a shadow, and stood between the mitten and the open door. His teeth showed. A deep, primal sound escaped from his chest. The man held up his hands. "That dog is trained to follow orders." Carla narrowed her eyes. "Looks like he's got new ones now." The man didn't speak again. He turned and walked down the steps, disappearing into the darkness without another word. But Mary Ann had seen it. Before turning away, the man's gaze had lingered on Scout, and there was something in that look that terrified her more than the knock, more than the grave, more than the woods. They weren't after Rook. They were after what he was protecting. After she locked the door and closed every curtain, Mary Ann sat on the floor beside the two dogs. Rook leaned into her gently, eyes still scanning the room, ever alert. Scout curled into her lap, unaware of how much danger was now wrapped around them. "They're coming back," Carla said quietly. "This isn't over." Mary Ann nodded, stroking Rook's fur. "No," she said. "But this time, we won't be the ones running." And outside, just beyond the tree line, headlights flashed once through the pines and vanished. The night stretched long and restless. Carla stayed in the living room with her sidearm within reach, dozing on and off in the armchair. Mary Ann sat curled up on the floor next to Rook and Scout, a flashlight flickering on the table beside her. Every creak of the old house, every gust of wind against the window made her flinch. But Rook didn't move. He stayed perfectly still, except for the slow lift and fall of his chest. He was listening, always listening. Just before dawn, Mary Ann heard it, barely louder than a whisper. A whine. She sat up instantly. It was Rook. Not fear, not pain. It was almost a memory, a sound full of longing. She placed a hand on his fur. He was staring at the front door, ears angled slightly back. His tail lay still, but his eyes held something different now. Not the soldier's focus from before, something older, something softer. "Do you want to show me?" she asked. He stood, and then, without hesitation, he walked toward the door. Mary Ann glanced at Carla, who was already sitting up, watching them. "I don't think he wants to run," Mary Ann whispered. "I think he wants to finish something." Carla stood and grabbed her jacket. "Then let's finish it." They left Scout behind, curled in blankets and safe. Rook led them down the road and into the woods before the sun had fully risen. But this time, he wasn't searching. He knew. They followed him for nearly a mile until he stopped in front of a moss-covered tree stump. It didn't look like much, just another forgotten landmark in the endless Georgia woods. But Rook sat beside it and pawed at the ground. Carla and Mary Ann exchanged a glance. Carla knelt and brushed away the damp leaves. Beneath them was a plastic bag, sealed tight with tape, aged and yellowed by time. Inside were photographs, printed documents, and a folded piece of paper. The photos were grainy but clear enough. Men in uniform exchanging something. Money, from the look of it, beneath a train overpass. There were dates scrawled on the backs in Sean's handwriting. Then came the documents. Transfer orders. Internal memos. One name appeared over and over. Major Eli Rourke. Mary Ann's blood ran cold. She remembered that name. Roark had overseen her husband's division before he retired. His file was always marked confidential, untouchable. The folded paper was a letter, addressed to Carla. Her hands shook as she opened it. "Carla, if Rook finds you, it means I didn't make it out. I don't know who I can trust anymore. But I trust you. Rourke's been running covert asset deals using K9 units as untraceable couriers. That badge you found? Dunley found out first, and they made sure no one ever found him. I'm next." Rook saw everything. He knows. Don't let this die with me. Carla folded the letter slowly, her jaw clenched. They killed him to bury this. And Rook carried the truth the whole time, Mary Ann whispered. Suddenly, Rook let out a bark, sharp and loud. From deep within the woods, a shout echoed back. Voices, boots crashing through brush. "They found us," Carla said, standing with her weapon drawn. Move! Now! They ran. Rook led them through a series of tight trails, winding through bramble and stone. But he wasn't running blindly. He had memorized every inch of this forest. Just ahead they saw it. An old ranger station, half collapsed, forgotten by time. "Get inside!" Carla yelled. They made it just as the first shot rang out, ricocheting off a tree near Marianne's head. Inside, Carla flipped an overturned desk and used it for cover. Marianne crouched behind it, heart pounding, clutching the bag of evidence. Rook stayed by the door, body taut, eyes locked on the approaching shadows. "You got a phone signal?" Marianne yelled. Carla shook her head. "No signal out here. But if we hold them off, just long enough, I left a pinged location on my car's onboard system. Dispatch will notice if I'm off-grid too long." Another shot, then another. But Rook didn't flinch. He stepped forward, just a little, protecting them like he always had. And Marianne, despite the terror in her chest, finally understood. This wasn't just about justice. It was about promise, loyalty. The final mission he had carried for 5 long years. And now it was almost complete. The gunfire stopped. For a moment, the woods were dead silent. Carla crouched behind the desk, breathing hard, her weapon gripped tight. Marianne clutched the plastic bag of evidence to her chest, refusing to let go. Rook stood by the door, still proud, waiting. A voice echoed through the trees outside. "You don't have to die for a bumpog, detective." Carla's lips curled into a bitter smile. "He's not just a dog," she muttered. "He's the only one who didn't forget." Another voice shouted, closer this time. "You give us the shepherd, we walk away. Simple as that." Rook didn't move. He didn't growl. He just waited. Marianne touched his back gently. "You don't have to do this. You've done enough." But in her heart, she knew. This was the only way he could finish what Sean had started. Loyalty wasn't a word to Rook. It was breath. It was blood. Carla looked at Marianne, voice low. "They'll come in soon. When they do, I need you to run. Take the puppy. Take the bag. Head east. I'll hold them off." "No," Marianne said. "We stay together." Before Carla could argue, Rook suddenly barked once, sharp and commanding, and leapt through the broken doorframe. "Rook! No!" But he was already kin. What followed was chaos. Shouts, footsteps, a scuffle in the leaves. A man screamed. Then another gunshot. Carla ran out after him. Marianne followed seconds later. They found one man unconscious, face bloodied, crumpled beneath the trees. Rook stood over him, chest heaving. The other attacker, there had been 2, was gone, vanished into the woods, but Rook had done what he came to do. He had stopped them, protected them, and now he stood motionless, his front paw bleeding. Marianne fell to her knees beside him. "Oh no, no baby." She pulled off her jacket and pressed it to his wound. Rook leaned into her, exhausted but proud. His body trembled, but his eyes never closed. "He needs help," she whispered. Carla nodded. "Let's get him out of here." They lifted him gently into Carla's SUV and sped back toward town, weaving through the trees like a ghost fleeing fire. The moment they hit cell range, Carla called it in. "Officer down. I repeat, officer down, K9 Rook. We have evidence of a classified cover-up and attempted murder. Requesting full backup, immediate response." By the time they reached the edge of town, sirens were already echoing from every direction. Rook was rushed to the local vet, an ex-military medic who had worked with K9s for years. He took one look at the badge Marianne held, the blood on her hands, and said only, "I'll do everything I can." Hours passed. Marianne sat in the waiting room, holding Scout in her arms. The puppy slept soundly, unaware that the dog who had carried him from the shadows was now fighting for his life. Carla paced nearby, phone pressed to her ear. Officials from 3 counties were involved now. The man Rook had taken down was in custody. The documents were verified. And the flash drive, every video, every journal page, was enough to shake entire departments. Major Eli Rourke was arrested that same day. When the vet finally emerged, wiping his hands on a towel, Marianne stood up so fast the chair tipped over behind her. "He's going to be okay," the vet said. Marianne's knees buckled, and Carla caught her just in time. "You hear that, Rook?" she whispered through tears. "You're not done yet." Days later, Rook came home. He walked slowly at first, his leg bandaged, his body thinner, but his eyes still burned with that same unbreakable light. Scout ran to him and nuzzled under his chin, and for the first time, Rook let himself rest. Marianne turned her living room into a kind of memorial. Sean Whitaker's badge, the recovered photos, the folded American flag the department delivered, and beside it all, a framed picture of Rook, standing tall beside Scout on the porch, with the sun rising behind them. The town never forgot what he'd done. They held a ceremony. The mayor called him a hero. Carla called him a legend. But Marianne? She called him family. And every morning after that, rain or shine, Rook would sit at the front door, just like he did that first day. Not as a soldier, but as a guardian, a survivor, a friend. If this story inspired you, remember, courage doesn't always wear a uniform. Sometimes it wears fur. Subscribe to the channel, give this video a like, and share it with someone who believes in second chances, loyalty, and the healing power of love.